the microwave was the number one technology that ruined the family.
Really?
Because it was ever after the microwave that families stopped eating together. Used to be, you'd have to cook it, but then once you could reheat it instantly, it was like, oh, well,
I don't need to
wait for you.
The more that I use social media or I'm just distracted with technology in general without a real true purpose, just kind of that mindless use of it, I am more distracted. I have less focus. I am way more impatient than I am otherwise. And my ability to just like comprehend situations and information in the middle of using technology mindlessly is way diminished.
In fact, there's a term called the Google effect,
Mm-hmm.
where basically we don't keep things in our memory as much as we used to because we know we can just look it up.
That's totally me. I mean, every Sunday dinner, someone brings something up, and I'm like, oh, I can Google that real quick, and I just look it up, and I'm like, hey, this is the information. And then an hour later, I've forgotten what I just looked up.
Exactly. And so, whether that's good or bad, I mean, you can be the judge. Ultimately, it's not creative, it's consumption. Welcome to the No Bushel Podcast. I am Big Ben and the Burning Bushman, your hosts today. What are we talking about today, Kendall?
Today, we are going to be talking about technology and the effects that it has on us as individuals, as society, the effects that it has on our mental health and maybe our intelligence and or lack thereof.
Technology makes us dumber, is what you're saying.
Yeah, to a certain extent. As great as technology is, there are certainly limitations and some negative sides, and we need to learn how to balance. Have a good balance between the use of technology, how we're using it, and as opposed to the natural interactions we have with going old school.
To some degree, this is kind of a strange conversation for us to have because we are actually both very connected.
Yeah.
We like our technology. We are not those people who are saying no technology, no technology.
Yep.
We love and appreciate and believe that technology is a tool for great good in the world. Believe it is even, I would say, God destined. Like I think God has given us much of the technology to fulfill the purposes of the gathering of Israel in the last days even. That being said, it polarizes things, and it allows us to do greater good, and it allows us to do greater evil. And I think there's a lot of ways that it's hurting us where we don't even realize it's hurting us. We don't realize it's a sin. We don't realize it's negative. So many things. So I look at the youth of the church, and in past ages, I felt like many of the negative, with the word of wisdom or like other commandments that we keep, the law of chastity, I felt like the youth of the church were highly protected from society at large from those things. And yet technology has this, I think in many respects, from isolation, loneliness, depression, anxiety, self-harm, like I think has almost worse effects on our youth than some of those other things. And yet we don't see it through the same lens as, following God's commands and not following God's commands. Because it's not like there's a commandment, thou shalt not use technology.
Right.
And there shouldn't be, because
like you said, it's good.
Exactly.
There are good things. And just to clarify, like, the use of technology itself is not sin, right? There's nothing wrong with using technology. What we're going to start getting into is what the problems with how we use it and certain aspects of technology that can lead us down a path of sin or and maybe not even just sin, but just a negative lifestyle that does not open up to a healthy, purposeful life.
And that's the trick, is the purpose behind what we use. Even the church recently came out with if you go into the youth tab in the LDS library, under youth it says there's a new thing, taking charge of technology. It's actually really, really good. It talks about the 3 Ps of technology. Have you heard this before?
I haven't looked at it. Maybe I need to.
So the 3 Ps of technology: purpose, plan, and pause. And we might get more into those. Before we get into that, can we start with some statistics.
Yeah.
Because some of these statistics you might say, well, that's not because of technology. And I'm not saying that all of these statistics are like that technology is the one root. In fact, it's not the one root, but technology is leading to a multitude of factors that is culminating in these.
It certainly plays a role.
Plays a role. So first off, let's just start with adults, okay? Loneliness. In 2020, which I know that was a heavy year to begin with, but this was the strange thing about these statistics is that all of the trends, people like to blame it on COVID, but if you look at the trends, like COVID actually made a very small dent in any of the percentage. Everything was declining.
It was already on its way down.
In fact, between 2010 and 2020 was like the big decline. So in 2020, 61% of adults reported loneliness. In 1990, 3% of men reported no close friends. In 2021, 15% of men reported having no close friends. 1 in 4 adults reports that they have no one they can confide in. It's 25%. It's a lot.
That's a
Don't
lot
have
of
anybody
people.
they can confide in. But the strange thing, I started with adults because prior to about 2015, loneliness was less in the younger generations, and it as we got older, it got higher and higher. So your senior population had the highest degree of loneliness,
which intuitively I think makes sense because the older you get, the fewer people you have around, whereas as a kid you're surrounded by friends and neighborhood and family and all that.
Seniors are losing all their friends; they're all dying, and so. But about around 2015, that got flipped on its head completely, and now Gen Z and millennials report more loneliness than any other generation, including seniors. Now, those stats might sound bad, but they don't sound as bad
as what you're about to tell us.
As what I'm about to go to. And this is the stats specifically for younger people. So, and I think there's a big, what I'm going to get to after this is, while adults don't manage technology great in a lot of respects,
especially the older generation,
we are ruining the maturational process of children, I believe, in many respects, through improper use of technology. And I think some of these stats will help to bring that in. So, between 2010 and 2020, which this is the time frame that social media became very big, smartphones became very big. Really like 2012 to 2013 was kind of when most of those things took off.
Yeah, you started the iPhone was a big deal at that point. You're going from your brick flip phones. That was kind of that transition period.
And a sharp incline in use of those. So in 2011, 23% of U.S. teens had a smartphone, but in 2018, so just 7 years later, 95%.
Wow.
Of teens.
What was the first percentage?
So 23% of teens
23 to 90
to 95% of teens. Now, if you even take it lower, because teen, it's a pretty wide range. Your older teens, you expect it more. But by 2018, 70% of 13-year-olds had. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we go through these other stats. So adolescent depression between 2010 and 2020 more than doubled. Adolescent anxiety more than doubled. Self-harm. This is one I just have a hard time wrapping my head around, like how this occurs, and yet I've seen it enough times. It's like, oh, this is a real thing.
It's a real thing for sure.
But self-harm has tripled, and that's based on ER visits but for individuals 10 to 19 years old.
Okay, so just what was bad enough to be reported to like a hospital. Yeah. Wow.
Suicide rates in ages 10 to 14 tripled between 2007 and 2018.
See, that just blows my mind.
2023, so the year 2023, 20% of high school students reported having seriously considered suicide in the last year. 9% had actually attempted suicide in the past year.
Wow. Way to start us off heavy. Doesn't that just make you sad?
Like, it does. It does. My heart breaks for these kids.
I just feel terrible knowing that that's the case. And and naturally, my instinct is like, I want to figure out what's causing that. Like we should do something to stop that, right? And hopefully, what we're going to talk about a little bit today is going to shed some light into one of the things that could affect that. Obviously, with the mental health crisis that we're dealing with, technology is definitely not the only thing that's going into that. There's plenty of things that play a role into our mental health and just overall state of well-being. But certainly, as we're going to discuss, it plays a large role, and in those stats that you shared, definitely are eye-opening for sure. It makes you really think.
And I'm going to take a slightly broader view of this guy. I want to start back. So I know I kind of focused because the stats have dramatically gotten worse since 2010.
Yeah.
And I think most people have almost kind of sensed that too. Like just we see it on our day-to-day experience.
You say it, and as terrible as it sounds, I'm not surprised by it.
And so, but this is also generational. And so technology has affected so many aspects of life, but I actually think that the number one thing that it's affected is the family and the family root, our faith and the attachments, the relational attachments that we have to well-meaning, loving adults in our lives as we mature. And so the maturational process, I mean, you can see it. There's no better babysitter than an iPad.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful. You hand
true.
it over, and suddenly your kid is quiet.
Yep.
And it's so easy and simple. But we've gradually, over time, we've made things easier. And this goes way back. Okay, so I'm gonna go way back. Family formation. Families. We used to get married younger. We used to have more babies.
Yep.
Do you know
start having kids earlier too?
Yep, we would do you know how many babies on average the average woman had in the year 1800?
1800.
I'm going way back. I'm going way back.
1800. I'm gonna throw out. I have no clue. I'm gonna say like 12.
Oh wow, that is pretty high. Okay,
You're going way back. I thought maybe we're okay.
It's okay.
Then probably like 8 or 9.
Okay, so it was 7. So
Okay.
average number of babies per woman was 7. Today,
My wife will tell you that what I just guessed is totally indicative of my guessing abilities. So I'm always way off base.
But I think most people will still be surprised by that. I mean, given the number of babies that most people have today. Now, gradually over time, I mean, 1800 there was very little technology at all,
Right.
And it was very, very gradual, the decline in number of babies over the next 100 years. It was somewhat it started to decline a little bit more in the mid to late 1800s when we've got the first condoms.
Interesting,
right? Which, I mean, makes sense because there's now a little more protection.
Yep.
So showing how I know we may not think of condoms as technology, but it was due to technology that we were able to develop
create something like that.
Condom. Okay.
Yeah.
Earlier forms of technology, a microwave. My wife studied home and family living at BYU, and one of her professors basically made the argument that the microwave was the number one technology that ruined the family.
Really?
Because it was ever after the microwave that families stopped eating together. Used to be, you'd have to cook it, but then once you could reheat it instantly, it was like, oh well,
I don't need to
wait for you, or I don't need to have you. Anyway,
Interesting.
I thought that was kind of a funny thing. And then as technology gets better, right? So you get the TV. That's a huge one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It gradually reduces the relationships around you.
That one makes a lot more
sense to you.
I can connect the dots a lot quicker than the microwave, but
birth control. Also, I mean, once again, well, in and of itself, it's not technology. It came about because of technology in the 1960s, and which then made life simpler, more convenient. You could, the sexual revolution, all of these things were able to come about because of modern conveniences of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of the point that I'm trying to make. But then we've just gone further and further and further and further and further,
Yeah.
to where now there's no, generationally we've had families, and I'm not saying there are no strong families. There's lots of strong families now, but it's harder to be a strong family
Mm-hmm.
when you have all of these modern conveniences
Sure.
that take care of raising your kids, or taking care of make it so you don't have to have children. You don't have to have as much responsibility. You don't have to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The accountability there.
Well, and I'd say part of that is also that back in the 1800s and 1900s, you had a lot more, because of the lack of technology, a lot more farming.
Mm-hmm.
Families had to be bigger because they needed more help on the land to take care of the harvest and the plants and whatnot. And now that technology, we've had the revolution of technology, we don't do that as much, right?
Yeah.
There's still, obviously, we rely on farmers and are very grateful for the people that do that, but as far as like the general population needing the access to farming, we don't have to, because technology has brought us so far along,
Yeah.
which I think only furthers your point that you're getting at.
Another form of pornography another form of technology that has been perpetuated, pornography,
Mm-hmm.
that also destroys families, makes it less likely for men to commit to women, less motivated to be in stable relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So everything, I think the crux of our conversation is going to lean more on the 2010 and after, and technology and the effects of modern technology.
Yeah.
But I think we've already seen the effects of technology in the past. It's just being exponentially increased.
Sure.
With the modern technology.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're going with that, and it makes a whole bunch of sense.
Let's touch on maturational processes.
Yeah.
For youth. Okay. Did you ever see the movie Inside Out?
Yes.
Okay, so
I like that movie.
I liked that movie too, and it was one of those movies that I didn't expect much from it when it first came out. I guess I didn't.
I've learned
see
to
the
feel
preview
that
or
way
something.
about just about every movie these days, but it's a good movie.
And I am not an emotional person. The older I get, the more emotional I've become. But that was one of the movies that I was closer to crying in that movie than like pretty much any movie I've ever seen. And in fact, I might have even shed a tear in that one, which was not a common occurrence.
Yeah.
And it came at that last part of the movie. I'm talking about the first one, not the second one, when she has come home and her emotions inside of her, she has joy and she has sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And sadness comes and touches the joyful memory.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly she has this emotional awakening. The moment where she starts to cry.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all had that experience, right?
Yeah.
Where you're emotionally struggling, and then you get with a trusted person that you can be vulnerable around,
Mm-hmm.
and you just let it loose, and you cry it out.
Yep.
And that memory, that joyful memory that you had, becomes sad too. But then there's strength in it, and it's something you can hold on to and you can be at peace with.
Mm-hmm.
And move forward with. And if you never make that connection, you don't get that emotional resilience or that maturational, that emotional maturational process.
Mm-hmm.
And vulnerability is actually a key aspect to that. You have to be able to be vulnerable with people.
Yeah.
And what I believe technology has done in large part is made it so that, one, people are not just vulnerable around anybody.
Yeah.
In fact, the people you're almost least likely to be vulnerable around are friends your age.
The
And-
people that are around you.
And yet we live in a culture where that has actually kind of become like the more common attachment that kids have. is where they always, they want to be with their friends. They want to do things with their friends. They want to be like their friends. And, you think of the quintessential teenager, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're always pushing back on their parents, and they're always, no, come on, I love it. Why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? And, and it's because they are no longer attaching to their parents. They're attaching to their peers.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that technology has magnified that pretty dramatically. And what happens when we attach not to trusted adults in our lives, but when we attach to peers. And this is not to say we shouldn't have friends. Friends can be really good and they can be really bad, right? Like friendship is good.
You should have friends.
What I'm talking about is primary attachment,
mm-hmm.
and who you confide in, who you want to be like, and who you are striving to impress. Okay?
Yeah.
And when you have a trusted adult in that position of primary attacher,
mm-hmm.
then you can go to school and you can have friends, and you can have jerk friends that say mean things to you. And then you can come home and you can confide and be vulnerable with your loved one.
Right.
And you can work through that and you won't be as hurt. If you don't have a strong adult caring individual that you attach to, and you attach to only your friends, and that's your primary attachment, one, they could really hurt you.
Yeah.
And you have no one to turn to in vulnerable...
When that time comes.
With that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And that wrecks people.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's everything. They don't have another option another outlet to go to. And I believe that technology has just made that polarization. It's caused more people to be attached to things that they shouldn't be, whether it's to friends or even just to the technology itself, where they are less vulnerable, they're less able to actually have a space to mature.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just touched on something, one of the stats you mentioned earlier, and I'm going to, if I remember what it was exactly, I think you said 1 in 4 men feel, or adults have someone they can confide in. Is that right?
So 1 in 4 state that there's no one they can confide in.
That there's no one that they can confide in. So 25% of the population of adults, let alone the kids, feel that they don't have anybody they can confide in. And was there another one about having close friends for men? Yeah.
So in 1990, 3% of men reported no close friends, but in 2021 it was 15% of men.
Yeah. So that to me is significant, especially because of what you just said. Like because we do need friends. We need people that we can relate with and can confide in. We need somebody that we can feel comfortable with. And we touched on this in an earlier episode at one point. If you don't have someone that you feel comfortable with, talking with or confiding in, find somebody, reach out. And I do think that a lot of these people try to do that and are just lost in how to. Part of that's probably because of the lack of that maturational process that you're talking about. And sometimes I think we use technology to try and find those relationships, and that's where a lot of the issue is. So we reach out on social media. I'm going to follow my favorite TikTok star, or just reach out to my 1,000 Facebook friends from high school that I don't ever talk to anymore. But I want them to feel like I'm a big deal, and if I can portray this identity, then maybe we'll feel this closeness. And I think social media allows us to imitate in important relationships without having the depth of that relationship, and that's where I think technology causes a problem. It's not that it doesn't have a relationship, it doesn't cause relationships. I think it just imitates it rather than giving us the depth that we need, that maturity of a real, true relationship with somebody that is going to make a difference positively in your life.
Because you can't look it in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
You can't give it a hug. Like the physical aspects of relationships, we don't realize how important they are until you start looking at the data.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, oh,
For
okay.
sure. Okay. Quick side note, because I just noticed this today. Because I use ChatGPT on just about everything these days. I had asked it a question. I don't even remember what the question was, but AI at the end of its answer put an emoji in its response to me. Like you said, like you can't look it in the eye, and you don't feel a hug or anything, but it gave me an emoji like trying to portray some kind of emotion to make me feel good, or it was like a funny face. I think it was a laughing face. It's like my chat bot is trying to like laugh with me and make have this relationship, and it kind of freaked me out. It was like almost a cool thing, but also like, what is going on here?
And the scary thing is that it will get better and better at that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're already seeing AI girlfriends, right? Where they like try to have some form of social relationship.
Yeah.
They're actually using this in like nursing homes to help give, because it's hard for people to be in that type of setting all day long and to find workers that can give relationship to people. And when we see in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe sooner than that, when we see the true culmination of robotics and AI together, I think you're going to see more and more things like this. I saw an ad the other day for an AI dog. You could carry it around with you and
Crazy.
it would yap at you and do stuff. And it's just like, okay, so, it's nice that we're trying to make it a little more personal, if you will, but it's just going to be more fake relationships.
And again, some of this I think can be good. Like, to be honest, my initial response when you mentioned AI girlfriends, my first thought is like, that's not good. But then you said AI for the elderly in a senior center home or something like that, and my first thought was, oh, that feels like a good thing. Like we're helping these lonely people. And so I'm really curious to see what that, like you said, in 5-10 years, what that ends up doing, if it ends up being beneficial. And that's what, I guess that's the point that I'm making is some of these things we can point to and say directly, this is bad, this is causing negative outcomes. But again, I do think that there are certainly good outcomes that can be taken from some of these things as well. So again, just to reiterate, we're in no way saying that don't use your technology, but just being aware of kind of some of those outcomes and the effects of that use.
And using it as a positive tool instead of a negative tool as much as you can.
Right.
And as new things come out, like sometimes it takes some learning before you figure out, like, is this really working for me or is this not? So ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT can be purely a consumeristic, look up answers to things and get them. And that can, just like Google, in fact, there's a term called the Google effect, where basically we don't keep things in our memory as much as we used to because we know we can just look it up.
That's totally me. I mean, every Sunday dinner, someone brings something up, and I'm like, oh, I can Google that real quick. And I just look it up and I'm like, hey, this is the information. And then an hour later, I've forgotten what I just looked up.
Exactly. And so, whether that's good or bad, I mean, you can be the judge. Ultimately, it's not creative, it's consumption.
Yep.
And that's where these tools can help us be more creative and invested and learn quickly in certain areas. I use ChatGPT like most of my scripture studies each morning, and I love it because I can really hone in on the details of different things, and it's a creative, like while I'm not just asking answers, I'm thinking things through deeply, and I'm thinking, okay, there's a lot of different ways I could take this. Let me look at this angle, let me look at this angle, let me look at this angle, and then I use chat to help me look at all those angles, and then I hone in on where I want to go from there. And and it's a fun, creative, engaging process that I believe makes me a better person, as opposed to
just being able to spout off the last scripture that it looked up for you and
sitting and vegging. So
that kind of goes to some of the things that I had just thought about as we were kind of getting ready for today's podcast, and a couple of things that I wrote down and that I just as I was thinking about things, made me realize how much I rely on technology, and for better or for worse. So, for instance, just a couple of examples here. The invention of the GPS. What a wonderful, wonderful invention. Because now I don't have to know where I'm going. I can just let my Google Assistant say, or Siri say, turn left at the next whatever.
Just wait until no one owns any cars, because we just have, it's like a utility, and you just say, hey Siri, get me a car.
Yeah.
And then it self-drives to wherever you want it to go, and then you don't actually ever have to walk or
you
go
don't
anywhere.
even have to know how to push the yeah, like it's wild. So I mean, think about when's the last time any of you pulled out a map and looked at a road map? I mean, have you looked at a road map, like a map of
Not a road
the
map.
state of Missouri?
I actually do pull up maps on like Google Maps, like look at the geography of things, but not.
But even that's Google Maps. You're pulling up the technology, like
true,
pulling out
true.
a piece of paper and saying, "This is where we are." And I remember back when I was a kid, that's how we traveled. Mom and Dad had a fold-up map in the car in the dashboard. In fact, I was at a health conference a few months ago, and at one of the tables they were handing out maps, and I thought, this is so outdated. But I took one because my thought was, if technology goes out someday, I'm going to be the one guy that's got a map in my car, and I can drive wherever I need to. But the point about the GPS, in my mind, is as wonderful as it is to be able to, just look up something and know how long it's going to take you to get there, the shortest way to get there, XYZ. It has so much to it. I have such a lack of direction that is kind of scary, to be honest. If I'm in the middle of nowhere, my car or my phone dies, I'm screwed. Like I'm not going to get out of that situation. I'm going to have to wait until somebody else can come save me.
I remember being a kid, and I'm old enough that I remember days well before GPS.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad particularly. He always felt like I had a good set of directionality, like knowing where things were.
Good for you. My parents were scared for me.
So I say that because my parents said that, and I probably did at that point, but these days, I'm horrible.
Yeah, don't ask me which way northwest or east is, right? Like, also south. I do know that there's 4 directions, but
I think I got you a little bit on that one.
I can actually figure that out. But in general, like which direction, if I'm sitting in a building, I couldn't tell you which direction it is. Like I have to sit there and for like 2 minutes remember, okay, the door's this way and then the street's on that side. And like I have this whole mental gymnastics I have to go through to figure it out. So while technology is fantastic, it does make it takes away some of that cognitive ability, the sense of direction that I personally have found. Also, this is a big one for me. Some people don't care, but when you text, I hate improper grammar or punctuation. And autocorrect is fantastic because it fixes things most of the time. If it fixes
Sometimes
it the wrong way, then it's even worse sometimes because it puts the wrong word in there. But I think in some ways it's actually bad for us because you don't actually have to remember how to spell words or use the right proper punctuation because it will just do it for you.
Mm-hmm. I've had this discussion with my wife and teaching our kids, and I've actually gone back and forth a little bit on it because I've thought I am not a great speller, to be honest. Never have been. And my kids...
I won't look at our texts then between the two of us.
I've battled in my mind the value of being able to write one, like beautiful handwriting. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of a lost art. Like most people don't handwrite anymore, and very few people have beautiful handwriting anymore. At least to the people I associate with.
What are you trying to say?
No. Might need to clip that. Okay. Yeah. So But beautiful handwriting and being able to spell well, it's like, okay, ChatGPT or other AIs are so good at writing. It's like, as far as skills for the future, are those actually
Is it needed
anymore? Yeah. Or if we just teach our kids to really think and to think in conjunction with how to use these things and use these resources in the way, is that good enough?
Right.
Or are they going to be missing something if we don't do the basics of, like, this is how you do it yourself, and then you can use these things? Like, is skipping that step harmful or not? And I go back and forth on that one, honestly.
Yeah, and we'll leave it up to you guys to decide between the two arguments here. I think that there's probably a balance between the two, because I realistically, the way our world is shifting, like, after you get out of high school, how many times do you have to write a paper? Almost never, unless you're in a very specific job field that requires some kind of written reports that are in that type of form. But yeah, I mean, at some point. But
persuasion, being able to come up with arguments and think critically about how you're presenting information and whatnot, even though, you know, that's where writing, I think, is so valuable, is not necessarily in the turning in of a paper and getting an assignment, but in the
creative process,
the maturing of the brain, of thinking through what's going to affect this, because writing ultimately is thought, right? And it's how we think. And so, we do focus. It's more on like the grammatical correctness and the spelling and like how good your handwriting looks. Those are the things that I'm like, how important is that?
Is that really a big deal? Yeah, for sure. We already touched on one of the other things that I had thought of, which is that we have a weaker memory because of the Google effect, where I can just look it up. But I mean, it's really interesting. People our age, our generation, and older, I think most of us still remember our home address when we grew up, and our home phone number, and probably one or two friends' phone numbers or addresses also.
So true.
Like I could spout off my home address, my home phone number from when I was 5 years old, because back then we didn't have a phone that could just, or you know, I had to look in the phone book and go all the way down. Now, obviously, this is dating us, and this is like, maybe we just sound like a bunch of old guys complaining about technology today. But I think that there's value in it, not just like remembering people's phone numbers, because I do think that it's amazing that I can just save it in my phone and not have to worry about it. But the broader scope of that concept is that because I don't have to remember everything, I don't. Like, I don't even try anymore. I don't have to practice the memorization skill of knowing things, because I can just pull out my phone at any given time and say, "Hey Google, tell me XYZ. What's the, you know, what are the statistics of this," or whatever.
So with that in mind, my question would be, I agree that we don't need to know everybody's phone number. Yeah. But how are we reallocating those resources that we have, or are we just letting them atrophy?
Exactly. I think that that's the bigger question. Because again, I think that it's great that we don't have to worry about it, but are we just not using our brains anymore, or are we actually putting that energy and time and focus on something else that's more productive because we don't have to do that anymore? And I think that's a good question to think on personally.
My kids in our home education, we actually do a lot of memorizing, and I've actually wondered on this too. It's like, in today's world, like, how valuable is it for children to learn to memorize? Yeah. And the more that I've come and evaluated it, I was like, you know what? I actually think it's really valuable.
I think it's fantastic.
I think it develops a skill where they can be the person in the room who just knows things, as opposed to the one that has to look things up. And not that that's necessarily important, but the cognitive growth and reasoning, you know, part of knowledge is not just being able to look things up, but it's being able to know enough things that you can mesh them all together and create a critical formulation of those things.
Definitely.
And if you don't know enough, because you just don't retain enough in your brain, then you're not going to be able to make those critical connections when you need to make them. It's like, oh, I heard this thing today, but I forgot it. And then I heard this thing tomorrow, and then I forgot it. And then, next week I hear this thing. And if I could remember all of them, it would
gives you a full picture,
give you a full picture. But because I don't remember any of them, it doesn't give me any picture.
Definitely. Yeah. So start memorizing some things. Work on that. I'll work on it too. Another aspect of this that I have found in myself is and I think this, you'll definitely agree with this, I'm sure. It's kind of twofold. Number one is technology allows us to have speed, but not depth. And this kind of goes into what we just talked about. Like, I can quickly Google whatever I want and find anything within 10 seconds. I can know who the king of Bulgaria was 55 years ago or whatever. But the depth of coming to know that, of doing the research, part of knowing the facts, when back in our day when we had to research, like part of the growth is not just reading the fact in a book and knowing it, but reading through the whole chapter and knowing all of the context of that whole thing, right? And knowing, so for instance, the king of Bulgaria, did he take over the place, or was he born into it? Is there even a king of Bulgaria? I don't know. but like, part of the research process is getting to know all of the context clues and other facts of that particular topic, along with the one fact that you're looking for. And so that gives us clarity and depth rather than just a quick, fast-paced knowledge of one or two little tidbits.
Essentially, that is rooted in consumption versus creation. Yeah. If you're not creating things, you're not getting any depth in anything.
And this goes to finding that depth goes to what you have mentioned a number of times, which is the lack of wrestle that we have in our world today. Like, we just don't deal with hard questions and thought-provoking questions very, very well, because I can just turn to technology and look up the answer, or try and hide my pain and my confusion and just scrolling through whatever. But if we take the time to search out the answers and study out the hard questions, whether it's who the kings of whatever country and their history, or if it's a spiritual matter of who is God and how does he fit into my life, and what role do I have to play in the grand scheme of things, and anything in between and outside of that spectrum. If we can learn how to wrestle with those questions, those hard, difficult questions, then that maturity that you've been mentioning, I think, really kicks in a whole lot more than just being able to open up my phone and ask my Google Assistant what I need to know.
Yeah. Being able to wrestle with things. So this takes me back briefly to how children mature and grow over time, and the role of a parent in that process. That we have a lot of technoference, where our days get interrupted over and over and over again, because either we have notifications or other things that are coming to us all day long, and our attention, we really can't think about more than one thing at a time.
We are simple creatures.
We try to multitask, and then in that multitasking, we inevitably are going to miss something. And one of the things that gets missed the most, I think, is relationship with our children. And even in things that we don't understand. So, like, we kind of understand the idea that, okay, I'm being distracted by my devices, and so I'm being less interacted with my kids. But it also goes the other way, where our kids learn that, Mom and Dad don't know everything. And so if I need to answer the question, I can just ask chat. And
I can just bypass mom and dad altogether.
So now I don't need to go to dad to learn how to shave. I don't need to go to mom to learn what a period is. I don't know. I start bleeding and it's like, that sounded funny. Okay, sorry. I have a lot of daughters. Okay, so a daughter starts their period for the first time, and if they're attached to their technology and they realize I don't need to connect with my mom on this. This is kind of an awkward thing. It'll just be simpler and easier if I just go look it up on my phone and figure out what's going on my own. It encourages independence before independence is good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because we have to have relationship with individuals, especially as we mature.
For sure. One thing, and this is going to kind of wrap full circle back to what you mentioned at the beginning about our youth, and I'm going to bring back social media to a certain extent with this. This is something that, again, I think that we generally accept that this is true and that this happens, but it's still kind of sad and shocking to see it happen. But I've seen it in myself as well, that social media gives you you receive it's a dopamine effect, right? Where it entices you to get more. It's exciting, but there's a lack of discipline, and it can really be addictive. In fact, as we've been talking, preparing for today's podcast, this last week I have turned off all of my notifications on my phone, and I ordered a charging base for my phone that I'm going to put away from my living room and family area, because when I get home I want to put my phone there and just ignore it. I'll have it on loud in case somebody calls me, but other than that, I don't want to be using it. It's just been getting me thinking about being purposeful with my technology and what I'm using it for. And the more often I think about it, the more I realize that I am the dad that's sitting on the couch while my kids are out there playing, noticing that, well, dad's just playing chess on his iPad. Or for the record, I'm trying to beat my nephew in chess, so I'm trying to get better at it. So there's a purpose, but most of it's mindless, just playing, right, or scrolling through social media. But one thing that I've noticed specifically in myself, and I think most of you will probably agree with, is the more that I use social media or I'm just distracted with technology in general without a real true purpose, just kind of that mindless use of it, I am more distracted. I have less focus. I am way more impatient than I am otherwise. And my ability to just comprehend situations and information in the middle of using technology mindlessly is way diminished. Which my wife will tell you that for sure, because she tries to tell me something from the other room, and then I'm finishing whatever I'm doing. I know she just said something, but I got to remember what she just said and then formulate an appropriate response. And most of the time it doesn't work. So the biggest one for me is my impatience, where it's almost like I feel like I'm actually doing something productive by scrolling through my feed. And if I get interrupted by doing that, I'm like, I'm doing something. Leave me alone. Mm-hmm. And then it hits me, and 2 seconds after, I'm like, no, you're not. I'm not doing anything right now. I'm just on my dang phone. Pay attention to your kids. And so I found that in myself so many times, to the point where this last couple weeks I've been trying to take action on that.
Which is awesome. I mean, this gets back to in the youth tools app, or the gospel library app, the 3 Ps of technology. Purpose, which you just talked about.
Yep.
You have to have a purpose for why you're going to. If you're going to mindlessly scroll or do something like that, you are just going to be taken over by algorithms.
Yep.
And you will only think what those algorithms want you to think. You might think that you're liking everything, but it's all based on an algorithm.
Yeah.
And so having a purpose for what intentionally am I going to my device to do, and then the plan. So I love how you talked about how you you actually got a place to store the phone when you get home, right? Like you're actually taking some time to plan out,
like process what I'm going to do with
exactly.
it.
And the last P, I think, might be the most beneficial and maybe the least done, and that is to pause, because it creeps. I can't tell you how many times like I go in cycles, and it's like I'm really good on my phone for a while, and then I use it more and more, and then I don't even realize that I'm using it more and more.
It just sucks you in.
And then you have to take a break. And so last August, I think it was, actually as a part of the for church, we encouraged people to do a month-long fast of elective technology, and that was so powerful for me. I don't know that I've ever had a month where I was as productive as I was that month. And it was kind of like mind-blowing to me how productive I was that month. And do you always have to do a month? No. Like, I think pausing can be brief. It can be a day. It can just be the willingness to go on a walk without your phone.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a 5-minute thing. And
or just putting it up when you get home in the bedroom so that it's not on your person. Like that can be considered a pause too. Personally, I think at least a week-long technology fast once a year is like super healthy and really good. Just because it really recalibrates and resets and pulls you out of the grip. it kind of like... It strangles you a little bit.
It really does. And when you do that, I think, because I've never done a month-long one, but the times that I've gone away from it, it is amazing to me how much I've realized that I've relied on it, or like how addicted I am to it. I mean, you start getting ghost vibrations in your pocket, and like, I don't even have my phone in my pocket, but I'm like imagining I'm getting these text messages or these notifications. And it just is amazing to me how much I have grown to rely on having just a computer in my pocket at all times. And whenever I do put it away for, just a couple of hours, it's like, it is freeing. It is really, truly freeing in a way that is really hard to explain without you just like experiencing it and doing it.
I will say, depending on how much you use your phone, there are some real addicts, and you can actually have like withdrawals in the process. In fact, they have, did you know they actually have camps that you can go to? These are like for youth that have technology addictions that are leading to major behavioral issues, and they will actually send them to camps for extended periods of time, and they talk about how like the first couple of days and first week, like they're just going through these withdrawals and they hate you and they hate everybody, but
going nuts.
But then they get past that withdrawal and they become like the wonderful children that they used to be, and the parents are like, I have my kid back. It's really actually... And
then they come home and you give them a phone back and it all starts over again.
It can.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. So for me, the big message with our conversation is I need to be more purposeful with the technology that I'm using. Again, technology is fantastic, and I'm in no way am I saying the technology itself is bad, but I think what we do with it and how we use it, what we're using it for, that purpose behind it, makes so much of a difference. And that's really what we're about here at the No Bushel podcast, right? Is like, what are you doing with your life, and how are you being purposeful in your your growth personally, as a family, as a community? How do we spread the light and bring truth? But what's finding purpose in life and being positive about that. So that's kind of my takeaway from
absolutely
what we've gone over.
We hope that you've gained some value from this conversation. We hope that you will, if you did find value from this conversation, start having this conversation with others.
Yeah.
More of us need to hear about this, not from a shaming standpoint, but from an acceptance that we all deal with this. Mm-hmm. We're all going to not be perfect at it at times, but we also need to recognize we can all improve and we can do better. And when we have those little glimpses of hope, and like you see how good it can be outside of the technology bubble, it can be good. So get those glimpses. Otherwise, this is the No Bushel Podcast. Have a good night.
We'll see ya.